Found a fish!
Hi, I'm Brad Knowles, producer of Friday Night Flies, hosted by Scott LeBoldis and Scotty Holmes. Enjoy the show.
What's going on, everybody? Tonight, I'm going to be tying a bull trout streamer, one that I kind of came up with freestyling on the vise. I'm not going to say that I've invented this fly because it is really just a bunch of borrowed ideas from a bunch of other flies I've seen. But my brother had never caught a bull trout on the fly, and we kind of had one last shot at it. And so I tried to come up with something that I thought was going to work, that was suitable for fishing streamers in BC, since we can only have a single barbless hook, and something that would hopefully get down fast. Most of bull trout, I don't know how they work all over BC, but mostly where I fish, they're sitting in deep parts of pools and stuff like that. So getting down fast is typically certainly important. I'm not going to show you the fly right now because it's not going to do any justice. I will show you a finished one when I go down to the vise, which let's just do that. Let's get at it. Let's go down to the vise and I will show you a tied fly, and then I will tie the fly for you. Okay, so here is the fly we will be tying tonight. And so there's a couple distinct reasons why I tied the fly like this. One of the main reasons, as you'll notice, hopefully you can see it right there, is the hook is actually about dead center in the fly. And so the reason the hook is dead center in this fly is because, like I said, in British Columbia, obviously all you locals know, we can only fish single barbless hooks. So by placing the hook in the center of the fly, I believe that I have an equal chance of getting tail strikes as well as head strikes. The other main reason, or like the big thought behind this fly, is having the articulation. So there's a small shank right there behind the head. It's just a very short shank in the head. And it's just to get some more wiggle out of this bad boy. And then of course, the sculpin helmet for the weight, to help it get down faster. Rabbit, again, when it gets wet, it gets really heavy and just sinks. It does make it more difficult to cast, but it does help the fly get down faster. And lastly, the way the sculpin helmet and the hook is oriented. So this thing rides hook up, and so the helmet's on obviously the way it is, and that helps it, that makes it swim like this. And so that way, if you are bouncing the bottom, you end up hopefully not hooking. Obviously you can still jam the head between some rocks, but the chances of actually digging this hook into the grass or weeds or a log when it rides this way is going to be far, far less. So that's my thoughts behind this fly. And like I said, I originally tied it to get my brother his first bull, and you know what? It worked. Very first pool we went to, and he casted that thing into this deep pool. Very first cast, he caught a bull trout on this fly. So we only have a chance to try them the one time, so I can't say they're the best fly in the world, but they definitely work. So I will show you guys how to tie this bad boy. We will start off with it's kind of like a bass popper or some kind of, I don't know, some kind of bass popper hook of some sort, anything. This is a size 4 hook. So we'll get that. Here, I'm gonna try to bump this back and not screw up my focus. So it's centered. Looks pretty good. And we are doing light olive, 140 UTC. Start right behind the eye of the hook. Wrap back. We just want to dress this hook to make sure we have significant, or not significant, but appropriate thread on here so the materials not going to slip around to the shank when we get tying them in there. So we just want to dress that entire thing. Doesn't have to be fancy, just quick back and forth a couple times. And then we will get going. So we'll cut that off, get out of the way. My original tailing material was, what was it? Pearl Crystal Flash from Superfly, but I was recently given this, I think it's pronounced Kreinik, by a lovely lady named Susan, who runs a fly shop called Chinook Wind Outfitters. She does have a website, so if you want to Google that and check her out, super nice lady. She sent me this for free, actually, just to give it a whirl. So it is also in pearl, and we're gonna use this instead. It's got a really nice crinkle. I like it. I'm really stoked to use it. So we're just gonna grab just 3 fibers. So when we double it over, it end up being 6 total down the shank. So there's 3. Leave it long, we'll trim it. It's gonna end up being the same length as our rabbit when we're tying the rabbit here. So just capture it there. Couple turns. Fold it over. Wrap it back up. And good to go. That's all we gotta do. That's nice and easy. Next material is a Magnum. Tiger barred Magnum rabbit strip, olive black over light olive. Obviously color of choice. You can tie these in anything you want. I've already pre-tapered this, and the overall length is actually gonna end up being not just the shank like we usually do. I'm gonna take this piece of hide and put it back to the farthest point of the hook, and I'm gonna end up kind of mentally marking where that is. So right about there. So you can see that the hide actually extends past. And now the tricky part. I gotta put this down real quick. I'm actually gonna mark that with a Sharpie so I don't lose it. And I'm gonna take the hook out of the vise. We're gonna invert that bad boy. Put it back on. You can see where I've just marked it with a Sharpie. I'm going to stab that through the hide, take it back out, and just run it down to kind of butt up with that flash stuff we tied in. What's it called? Kreinik? I don't know. Somebody's gonna have to correct me on the pronunciation of that stuff, but. So now you should have something that kind of looks like this. It's a little bit of a mess to deal with. It's not too bad. So once we've done that, so the rabbit's not going to get tied in the back. It's actually just going to butt up against those chenille fibers or flash fibers, and then we're going to end up pulling it over like that. So we're just going to keep it out of the way, hopefully, to the best of our ability. Next material, UV polar chenille, excuse me, in gold. Get her out, tie her on by the rope, wrap this all the way back to where your thread was, or to as far as you took your thread back originally, and then wrap it all the way forward. A little bit in front of the eye, not all the way. And then we're just gonna palmer it for these first 2 might be annoying, trying not to capture some of this rabbit. Trying to get that rabbit pushed back. We'll pull it forward in a sec. So, doesn't have to be crazy, but kind of palmer it back. They don't have to be completely touching either. It could be like a slight spacing in there. Like, don't have to be like tightly wrapped together. But make sure you do give it a good cinch down. This material does stretch a little bit. When palmering back, just be very mindful not to stab yourself continually on your hook, which I've already done a couple times, which hopefully you guys haven't seen that, so I look like a professional. And we will continue just wrapping this forward till we get to the front. Yeah, I'm actually not counting it out. I'm sure you guys are surprised. I tend to count wraps. I don't know why. Capture that. 1, 2, 3. Switch hands. Cinch it down tight. 1, 2. I know I got fibers everywhere. Couple in front. Cut that off. Preen everything back. Couple wraps just to capture it. Now what we'll do is this is my super magic tool. And we're just gonna use the super magic tool to brush everything. Kind of create a part right on the top, in the center, the best of your ability. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's a streamer. And once you're happy with that part, it doesn't hurt to lick your fingers a little bit. And then, so make sure we're pointing this rabbit hide the right way. Again, we're making sure, hopefully you can see that, the hide there. We're gonna pull that hide butt up to all the materials we just did. And we're gonna pull that forward. And again, this really helps we wanna try to capture that hide directly when we do this, just because it'll bind down a little bit better. So we wanna pull it tight, maybe a little more. And then really get this wet. It makes it a little bit easier. And the other thing too is you can see that maybe my thread, you can see it's flattened out there. Probably not, it's probably not tight enough, but I'm just gonna spin it clockwise in order to cord that up a little bit more so it's more like a rope instead of a flat thread, which UTC Ultra thread tends to be when it unravels, which is nice for a lot of things, but for this we wanna be able to really bite down into that hide. So now that we're corded up, those are 2 really light wraps, and then I'll start to snug it up. Nothing crazy, we don't want to snap our thread. Don't do anything stupid like that. I'm sure Zach would love it if I snapped my thread on camera, but hopefully not today. So now that's snug, we'll just do 1 or 2 or 3, see I'm counting, maybe 5 wraps right in front to kind of lock it down. And then we'll get in there with our scissors, tight as possible. Get rid of that. We'll actually use that again in this fly. And then just trim up the best you can around that eye, because we're going to put a shank in there. We want to be able to move freely. So now that you're done that, just wrap it back just a little bit, capture it in there. Cool. Whip finisher. Boom. If I learn how to use this thing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Counting again. Can't help it. Can't help it. What did I do? Okay. Don't use a whip finisher like that, because that's the wrong way to do it. I think I could save this. I did it. I saved it. You're welcome. Cool. A couple weird fibers going up front, which honestly won't harm anything, but since I'm a crazy person, I have to trim them off. So that's kind of just the back half of the fly. Then we're going to attach this tiny little shank. It is only a 20 millimeter shank. If I can get it in there. There you go. This is the fun part. So then we're going to take this entire thing. I'm just going to let this thing dangle down below. No, up above. Up above makes it easier for me. And then we're just going to recapture that little shank in our vise. Okay. Restart the thread behind the eye. And you want to really pinch that shank down tight. We still got to be careful with that hook up there, not to be stabbing ourselves endlessly. Okay, that's cool. So now what we want to do is, am I still in focus? Sure am. Take that rabbit hide that we just used. Make sure that sometimes when you cut it off, it ends up being a little bit strange, but this one isn't too bad. Sometimes you'll end up with like a little dead spot at the end where you might want to trim up the hide, but I'm actually pretty clean. You can see right there. And believe it or not, we're actually just going to put a tiny little bit. We really just want to take this hide, as I stab myself with the hook, and you guys can't see that, one sec. Let me try to prune this back. So we want the hide, I'm going to do it like this, flat, yeah. So we're going to tie it in. We would want the hide to basically touch the hide of the other of our back hook. This is just going to kind of create a small little covering point. So this is a very small piece of material. So we're just going to measure it on the top. And we want to tie it in basically right in the back where our thread is, because we need to save as much space as possible there. So right there is going to be good. Once you got it measured, it's almost easier. Well, I find it easier. Obviously pull it away from the hook and just work with your materials. Keep wetting your fingers. I'm trying to do this on the camera. And then you really want to just expose that hide again. Sometimes it helps to have a little dish of water when you're doing this kind of stuff. Obviously I'm not, oh actually I do have a cup of water right there. But I don't want to drink it, so I'm not going to put this rabbit fur in there, even though I keep licking it, so what's the difference? But yeah, so you can kind of see we got that. Hopefully you can see that clear split in the hide right there. Again, we want to cord up that thread, spin it clockwise hard. And once you have it corded up, and we got our length happy, man. Just want to kind of fold that over the shank. One, I'm not going to count, I promise. And yeah, so 4 or 5, and really cinch that bad boy. And then once you're happy with how tight you got it, just pull this hide back really tight and just get a couple wraps down this. That'll kind of lock your work in there. Once you're back and forth on it once, she ain't going anywhere. So now that you've done that, again, come in here and cut it as close as possible. We want to save space in this front. We don't have a lot of space to work with on this tiny little 20mm shank. And so saving space at this point is pretty important. So we want to just get rid of that extra hide best you can. And then wrap her down. Just lock her down. There we go. Look at that. Seamless connection. Damn, that looks good. I like that. That's looking good. All right, so now we're going to tie in a red accent right here. And this is to imitate either the gills or possibly some kind of blood. It's really just to trigger a predatory strike. So I have this interesting red kind of chenille here. I got it from Canadian Llama, if you're interested in where it came from. This is what is advertised as 40 mil, but they're pretty honest about it, and they've measured and it's at about 35 across. So I'm just gonna cut some of the chenille out just so I can get a little bit of the rope exposed, just make it easier to tie in here. And I'm gonna tie it in directly, if I can capture it, behind the, or in front of the rabbit there. So we'll get that tied on. And this is only just gonna be, so we're gonna try to wet our fingers and palmer this backwards as we wrap it. It's gonna be kind of a mess, but as soon as we tie it off, we will just preen it all back. There's 3 wraps. Try to get it in there. separate the fibers a little bit. This stuff's pretty coarse actually. Capture it, 3 quick wraps. Cut it off. Now you can clean it all up. Just pull everything backwards. Wrap back on it. There we go. That really gets a good chunk of red in there. Nice and sparkly. Good stuff. You want to keep checking your sculpin helmet, of course, to make sure she's going to fit. We kind of got the perfect amount of room right now, because now what we're going to do is tie in some, actually we're going to do our rubber legs, sorry. So we got some silly legs, olive, black flake. They don't necessarily have to be this color combo. Something in the green family will work just fine. These just happen to be what I have. So I'm going to take these, separate 3, and I'm aiming to have them just the length of just before the hook. So I'll tie them in on my side, then I'll fold them back onto your side, and you can see we'll trim the length a little bit later. But they don't need to extend much past the hook. I don't like to tie them or let them dangle much past the hook, because I don't like them to possibly have the chance of fouling in the hook, and then they're not really doing their job if they're stuck in the hook. Not wiggling like they're supposed to, not being silly. So now that we just captured on my side, we'll pull it back on your guys' side, tie it in there. So these wraps aren't crazy tight, and the reason being is we don't want to risk cutting through the rubber and then they're not going to be there at all, which would just suck. So there's that again. Again, I'm pretty paranoid about overcrowding this, so we got still lots of room for the sculpin helmet. So now we're going to go to some 10-use laser dub and olive. Grab a pretty healthy pile of it, but what you want to do is start kind of pulling it apart from one another over and over again. And what this does is helps to straighten out the fibers instead of having them all balled up, kind of getting everything going in the same direction. It takes a little bit. It's worth it though in the end. And then you can kind of roll it in your hands a little bit. Sometimes you just get stuff stuck on the end, so you can pull it out from the end and put it back in the middle. Kind of just have to work with it till you're happy with it. Pretty happy with that right there. So I'm gonna cord that up a little bit. I prefer to have that corded for when I tie this in. And we're just gonna center it 50-50 front and back of where, from the position on the hook shank. And then we'll just capture it with one kind of looser wrap, and then a second one, and then pull it firm towards yourself. Not too tight, you don't want to snap it. So at this point, I like to just pull it in front, give it 1, 2, 3, counting again, pile of wraps, 7 or 8. And what that does is it kind of locks your work into place. And so then you can pull it back and put it right in there. So we don't have to worry about that loosening up now or turning on the shank. So we'll grab silver belly minnow, laser dub again. Same thing, I'm gonna take a pile of it and then try to straighten it all out, all the fibers here. Again, you're just kind of pulling them out. This stack actually came out pretty clean. Yeah, not too bad. So usually what I would do is if I was tying this myself, I just rotate my vise. But my vise, because the way I have it oriented, it's not a fancy one. It doesn't rotate on a parallel axis, horizontal axis, sorry. And it's gonna be horribly out of focus and not in frame. So I'm just gonna try to tie this in right on the bottom, which if I get a loose wrap on it, I should be able to do. But ideally you wanna flip this over and invert it. It'll be a lot easier for you guys to tie in. I'm just gonna do it like this because I'm kind of stuck doing it like that. So again, one loose wrap. Get the second wrap in there. Just yanked my whole vise because this table's slidey. And you just want to pull it towards yourself, nice and snug. And really cinch her down. And then you can just advance your thread, separate that up in front, pull the white out of the way as best you can, and just get a bunch of wraps in there. Helps it to not slip anymore, and you won't lose your work. Final stage, of course, is fitting your sculpin helmet again. We're gonna have lots of room, but the one thing you want to do now is kind of just build up a thread base in here, thicken everything up so the sculpin helmet kind of just snugs onto it. And the reason being is we're going to coat this with crazy glue, super glue, and it'll really help if it's snug. Yeah, and that's like perfect. So now we will whip finish that bad boy. Don't have to go crazy because, oh man, traffic materials. It's going to be covered in crazy glue anyways. So just get what you can in there. Cut it out. Or cut your string off. Another dry fit because why not? So I'm extremely happy of how that fits actually. It's perfect. I got the entire eye exposed. So now just take your super glue of choice. I'm just using this Gorilla super glue because it's what I got. I don't like the brush. I don't know why it comes out like I find ridiculously too fast. Hopefully you can see that. You just want to get it covered on all sides. Excuse me. Then take that helmet again. Cram it on there. You're going to want to hold it snugly in place for a little bit. I'm not going to hold it on here forever, make you guys suffer through that. At this point, you're going to want to use your magic tool again, toothbrush, and just comb this bad boy out. It'll help get rid of any fibers that want to not hang out with us anymore out of there, which is perfectly fine. If you have any really long ones, you can just tear it. She'll come right out. You do that on the bottom too. Comb the sculpin's beard. And then to complete the look, obviously, two things. By the way, that's a size small sculpin helmet. But to complete the look, obviously, you're going to want to take the eyes in the package and super glue them in there. I'm not going to do that on video because it's super obvious. But one thing you can do is take a Sharpie and you kind of hold this back. And you just do straight lines up. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And what it does is it helps, doesn't help, but well, maybe it does help. I don't know. I like to do it. But it really ties in with the barring on the rabbit strips. Ow. So, yeah, that's that. I'll take her up top and sign out of this video. Thanks very much. Well, that's it for me, guys. Hope you enjoyed that one. Plan on putting that streamer to the test thoroughly this year coming up. I wouldn't say it's tried and true, tested, works every time out. Like I said, we only fished it one day, but it caught a fish on the very first cast. So my hopes are high for that one. I overall like the design. Obviously the colors can be played around with however you want. Doesn't have to be green, doesn't have to be a golden chenille body. You know, you can use, you do white magnum strip on the top, white and black, you know, like do it more of a white fish, like a traditional bull trout, white on white kind of thing, but still get that red accent in there. Lots of things to play with on that one. I think it's gonna be fun. I'm gonna try it in some new colors when I get some more rabbit strips and stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's just a cool spot. Like I said, I'm kind of stoked on the hook placement, so it's not, you're not favoring the front half, you're not favoring the back, or like a head strike or a short strike or a tail strike. Yeah, I think it's going to be a good fly. Moves really well. My brother was stoked on it. Yeah, that's it for me, guys. Sorry for my rambling. Sorry this one took so long. Glad you hung in the whole way through. Really appreciate it. Remember to like, subscribe to Friday Night Flies on YouTube. Make sure you check us out. We are now on Instagram, trying to post as much as possible. Again, just search at Friday Night Flies. And of course, if you're interested in what I'm doing, please follow me on Instagram. I am at Kootenay_kid. Thanks very much. Have a good night. Check you guys later.